Zambia is shaken. A powerful voice from Africa, Professor PLO Lumumba, has stepped into the debate, and his words have left the nation buzzing. In a fiery address, Lumumba exposed what he calls the dark truth about democracy in Africa, linking it to the battle surrounding Edgar Lungu, his family, and the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema. But what exactly did he mean? Could democracy itself be used as a weapon, not to unite, but to divide? For some, his message is a direct defense of Lungu's legacy, as the former president's burial mystery and family's legal troubles continue to dominate Zambia's headlines. For others, it's a warning to HH and the UPND that power without accountability is dangerous. Tonight, we break down PLO Lumumba's explosive remarks, connect them to the political storm in Zambia, and reveal why his words could change how we view democracy itself. Stay tuned, because this story is bigger than anyone expected. Zambia's political storm has taken a new twist. Professor PLO Lumumba, one of Africa's most outspoken voices, has delivered a powerful message, exposing the dark side of democracy and connecting it directly to the battle surrounding Edgar Lungu, his family, and President Hakainde Hichilema, HH. In this video, InspirAfrica official breaks down what PLO Lumumba said about democracy's hidden role in Africa, how Lungu's burial mystery and family's legal war fit into this debate, why HH and the UPND are now at the center of this controversy, what Lumumba's warning means for Zambia's future. This is not just about politics. It's about power, justice, and Africa's fight for true democracy. Subscribe to InspirAfrica official for more breaking news and powerful insights into Zambia, African politics, and global power struggles. The professor speaks. He is known across Africa as a fearless voice. A man who has challenged presidents, exposed corruption, and questioned the very foundations of power. His name? Professor PLO Lumumba. When Lumumba speaks, people listen. His words cut like a blade, sharp, precise, and impossible to ignore. And in Zambia, his latest speech has shaken the nation to its core. Standing before a crowd, Lumumba did not flatter, he did not soften. Instead, he issued a warning. He spoke of Zambia's dark secret, a hidden truth about democracy that few dare to confront. On the surface, Zambia is praised as one of Africa's democratic success stories. Elections held, power transferred, institutions intact. But Lumumba's question was simple: is it democracy, or is it just the illusion of it? He pointed to the rivalry between Edgar Lungu and Hakainde Hichilema, two men whose names dominate the nation's recent history. Lungu, accused of corruption and authoritarianism. HH, celebrated as a reformer, yet increasingly criticized for centralizing power. Lumumba's words carried an uncomfortable message. Zambia may have changed presidents, but did it truly change systems? Or has the same cycle of patronage, secrecy, and power games simply continued under a new name? For many in the audience, his words felt like a mirror, reflecting what they already suspected, but feared to say aloud. For others, they were explosive, even dangerous. Because if Lumumba is right, then Zambia's democracy is not the beacon it appears to be, but a fragile illusion built on shifting sands. But why now? Why would Lumumba choose this moment, after Lungu's death, in the middle of Zambia's political uncertainty, to reveal such a truth? Was it a warning to President HH himself? Was it a message to the Zambian people to wake up? Or was it something bigger? Part of Lumumba's long struggle to push Africa toward a new political dawn? One thing is certain: when the professor speaks, it is never by accident. His words are not just commentary. They are a call to action. And that call leads us into our next chapter, Democracy or Illusion, where we dive deeper into Lumumba's warning and uncover whether Zambia's democracy is truly alive or already broken. Democracy or illusion? From the outside, Zambia is often praised as a model of African democracy. Elections are held, power has changed hands, and institutions appear to function. To the world, it looks like a success story. But Professor PLO Lumumba asks a question few dare to raise: is this democracy, or is it an illusion carefully maintained to impress outsiders? Think of it. Democracy is not just about voting. It is about accountability, transparency, and the people's true power over their leaders. And yet, time and again, Zambia's elections have been followed by accusations of rigging, intimidation, and behind-the-scenes deals. During Edgar Lungu's time, critics claimed democracy was eroding. Journalists silenced, opposition voices harassed, and institutions bent toward one man's will. When Hakainde Hichilema came to power, many believed the tide had turned.
A new dawn, a fresh start.
But Lumumba's words cast a shadow. Has anything really changed? Or has Zambia simply replaced one strongman with another? Look closely, he says, and you'll see familiar patterns. The same political elite, the same wealthy backers, the same hidden interests shaping decisions while ordinary Zambians struggle with poverty, unemployment, and rising costs. The faces at the top may change, but the system remains untouched. This is the illusion of democracy, where the ritual of elections exists, but the substance of people's power is missing. Where freedom is promised, but silence is rewarded. Where leaders speak of reform, but secretly preserve the same tools of control. And it's not just about Zambia. Lumumba warns that across Africa, democracy has become a performance, a show staged for the world, while the true script is written by a handful of powerful men and women in smoke-filled rooms. So the question becomes, is Zambia truly free? Or is it trapped in a cycle where democracy is only a mask, hiding the deeper reality of power, corruption, and betrayal? The answer, perhaps, lies in the shadows of one man's rule, Edgar Lungu. His legacy is more than a chapter in history. It may hold the key to understanding how Zambia got here. And that takes us to our next chapter, Lungu's shadow. Lungu's shadow, even in death. Some leaders never truly leave the stage. And in Zambia, Edgar Lungu remains one of them. His presidency was marked by deep division. To his supporters, he was a strong leader, a man who held the country together during difficult times. To his critics, he was the very face of corruption and authoritarianism, a man who bent institutions to his will and treated democracy as a tool, not a principle. But whether admired or despised, one thing is certain: Lungu's shadow still hangs over Zambia. Under his rule, accusations piled high, deals struck in secrecy, wealth accumulated by those closest to power, opposition voices silenced with arrests and intimidation. It was a system that critics say hollowed out democracy, leaving behind only the shell. When Hakainde Hichilema won the 2021 election, many believed the page had turned. But Lumumba's warning forces us to look again. Because even if Lungu is gone, the system he shaped remains. The networks, the loyalties, the hidden beneficiaries, they didn't vanish with his presidency. They adapted. They survived. And that is the true danger of his shadow. Democracy may appear alive, but beneath the surface, the structures of control built during Lungu's years are still at work. This is why Lumumba's words sting so deeply. He reminds Zambia that democracy is not just about replacing a president. If the systems remain unchanged, then the ghosts of the past continue to rule the present. But here's the haunting question: was Edgar Lungu simply a man who abused a system? Or was he the product of a broken system that existed long before him? Because if it is the latter, then Zambia's problem is far bigger than one man's legacy. It means the very fabric of democracy itself is woven with threads of deception and power plays. And now, President HH stands at the center of that storm, tasked with breaking free from Lungu's shadow while fighting the temptation to cast his own. Which brings us to the next chapter, HH's balancing act. Can Hakainde Hichilema deliver the democracy he promised, or is he walking the same path that trapped his predecessor? HH's balancing act when Hakainde Hichilema, HH, as Zambians call him, swept into power in 2021, hope filled the air. After years of Edgar Lungu's rule, people believed change had finally come. HH promised transparency, accountability, and a government that would serve the people, not itself. But promises are easy. Delivering them is the real test. From day one, HH has faced a nation hungry for reform, but also weighed down by debt, corruption scandals, and fragile institutions. Every decision he makes is watched, dissected, and compared to the man who came before him.
And there lies the delicate balance.
On one side, HH must show strength, rooting out corruption, enforcing the law, and proving that Zambia has entered a new era. On the other, he must avoid slipping into the very traps that consumed Lungu, using power to silence critics, rewarding loyalists, and tightening his grip on state machinery.
Professeur PLO Lumumba est warning, que dit pire?
He asks, is HH building a stronger democracy, or simply building his own power within the same flawed system? Consider this. Critics accuse HH of centralizing decisions, of surrounding himself with loyal allies, and of cracking down on opposition voices in ways that feel uncomfortably familiar. His supporters defend him, saying it's necessary to clean up the mess left behind. But where is the line between cleaning up and closing in? This is HH's balancing act. Too much force, and he risks becoming the very thing he fought against. Too much hesitation, and he risks being seen as weak, a leader unable to break the cycle. And in this fragile balance, the stakes are enormous. For Zambia, it's not just about one presidency. It's about proving whether democracy can survive beyond personalities. But there's another layer to this story, one that Lumumba points to with urgency. Because beyond presidents and promises, there are forces in the background shaping Zambia's destiny. Deals, alliances, and betrayals that never reach the headlines. And that brings us to the next chapter, the secret deals. What agreements, whispered in shadows, could explain why democracy feels so fragile in Zambia? The secret deals in every democracy. There are two stories, the one told to the people, and the one whispered behind closed doors. In Zambia, that second story is often the one that decides everything. Professor PLO Lumumba warns that African politics is rarely about what the public sees. Behind speeches, campaigns, and public promises, there are hidden agreements, deals made in boardrooms, foreign embassies, and smoky back rooms. Deals that never make the headlines, but which shape the destiny of a nation. During Edgar Lungu's rule, whispers of such secret pacts were everywhere. Alleged contracts signed with foreign mining companies that drained Zambia's copper wealth. Loans negotiated with international lenders, leaving the country chained to crushing debt. And the murmurings of political alliances, where loyalty was bought, not earned. But here's the twist. When HH took power, many expected these practices to end. Yet, new reports suggest the old game never really stopped, it just changed players. Critics argue that today's government is still making secret commitments, this time with promises of debt restructuring and foreign partnerships that come with invisible strings attached. The question is not whether these deals exist. The question is, who do they serve? The Zambian people, or powerful elites and foreign interests? Lumumba poses a chilling thought. Maybe Zambia's democracy has never truly been free. Maybe every president, Lungu, HH, and those before them, has been forced to play a game whose rules are written outside Zambia's borders. Think about it. Why do mining contracts remain secret? Why do ordinary Zambians struggle, while billions flow in and out of the country with no accountability? Why do leaders, no matter how different they sound, end up walking the same path? The truth may be that democracy in Zambia is not destroyed in broad daylight. It is quietly traded away in hidden agreements. But if secret deals explain the weakness of democracy, then another factor explains its fragility, the fear of truth itself. Because in Zambia, those who dare to speak out often face a fate that chills every would-be whistleblower. And that takes us to the next chapter, silencing the critics. Silencing the critics in every democracy, the voice of the people is supposed to be sacred. But in Zambia, critics say that voice has often been muffled, twisted, or silenced altogether. During Edgar Lungu's presidency, journalists, activists, and opposition leaders complained of intimidation. Newspapers were shut down. Radio stations were threatened. Protesters were arrested. And critics were branded as enemies of the state. When HH came to power, he promised something different: freedom of expression, media independence, and open dialogue. For a while, many believed a new dawn had arrived. But slowly, shadows began to creep back. Opposition parties claimed they are being targeted, their gatherings restricted, their voices dismissed. Some journalists whisper about subtle pressures, not as blatant as before, but enough to remind them that freedom always comes with limits. Civil society activists warn that a culture of fear is returning, only dressed in new clothes. PLO Lumumba puts it bluntly: a democracy that fears criticism is no democracy at all. If leaders cannot tolerate dissent, then elections become a ritual, not a choice. And this is where the pattern becomes clear. Whether under Lungu or HH, Zambia's leaders face the same temptation: to protect their image, even if it means silencing the voices that keep democracy alive. But here's the deeper danger. When citizens see critics being silenced, they learn to silence themselves. Self-censorship spreads like wildfire. People stop asking hard questions, stop demanding accountability, stop believing their voice matters. And that silence is exactly what corrupt systems feed on. So the question is this: is Zambia's democracy truly opening up, Or is it simply finding smarter ways to control the narrative? Because history shows us something terrifying. Silencing critics is never just about today. It's about shaping the future, ensuring that certain truths never come to light. But what if the silence is not just about internal critics? What if Zambia's political story is also shaped by powerful voices outside its borders? Voices too loud for any president to ignore. That's where we turn next, to the foreign hand. The outsiders who may hold more influence over Zambia's democracy than its own citizens. The foreign hand every nation tells itself it is sovereign. That its destiny is written by its people, its leaders, its history. But in Zambia, sovereignty has always come with a shadow. A foreign hand that guides, pressures, and sometimes even dictates the path forward. PLO Lumumba warns that democracy in Africa often wears two faces, one for the people, and one for the powerful outsiders who shape policy from behind the scenes. Zambia is no exception. Think about the debt crisis. Zambia was the first African nation to default during the pandemic. Overnight, international creditors, from the IMF to China, became central players in Zambia's survival. Every bailout came with conditions.
Every rescue plan, carrier invisible string.
And with each deal signed, the question grew louder. Who truly controls Zambia's economy? The government in Lusaka, or boardrooms in Washington, Beijing, and London? But it's not just money. Foreign mining companies extract copper, the lifeblood of Zambia's economy, yet ordinary citizens see little benefit. Contracts are often hidden, profits flow abroad, and leaders find themselves caught in a dangerous game: keep the investors happy or risk collapse. Even politics is not immune. Diplomats, aid agencies, and international organizations all claim to defend democracy. Yet, critics argue they sometimes choose stability over freedom, backing leaders who protect their interests, even if democracy suffers. Here lies the silent dilemma. Is Zambia truly free to choose its own path, or is it trapped between competing powers, each pulling the strings in different directions? Lumumba's warning echoes like thunder. A democracy influenced by outsiders is a democracy on borrowed time. For every foreign handshake, there may be a hidden deal. For every loan, a quiet surrender of sovereignty. And Zambians are left asking, are we citizens in charge of our destiny, or pawns in someone else's game? But if foreign hands shape Zambia's present, then history holds the blueprint of how this came to be. Because the struggle between leaders, citizens, and outsiders is not new. It is a cycle. And in that cycle lies a question that Zambia still hasn't answered. That takes us to our next chapter, the cycle of power. How history keeps repeating itself, and why democracy remains stuck in the same loop. The cycle of power history, they say, does not repeat itself, but in Zambia, it often rhymes. Look closely at the country's political story, and you'll see a pattern. A cycle of hope, disillusionment, and betrayal. A cycle that traps leaders and citizens alike. When Edgar Lungu rose to power, he promised stability, growth, and a new dawn. Instead, his years became defined by accusations of corruption, repression, and economic decline. Then came Hakainde Hichilema, hailed as the man of change. The opposition leader who had once been jailed under Lungu's rule now stood as Zambia's president. His victory felt like the breaking of a curse, the start of something new. But as months turned into years, critics began to notice something unsettling. The promises of reform met the realities of power. Old habits returned. New scandals replaced old ones. And slowly, people began to whisper the question no leader wants to hear: are we back where we started? This is Zambia's cycle of power. A wheel that keeps turning. Leaders rise, promise change, then fall into the same traps. Citizens place their faith in personalities instead of institutions, and when those personalities fail, democracy itself takes the blame. Professor PLO Lumumba warns that until this cycle is broken, democracy will remain fragile. Because the real problem is not just the leaders, it is the system that allows leaders to become bigger than the law, bigger than the people, bigger than democracy itself. And here is the bitter truth: unless Zambia strengthens its institutions, every new leader will eventually look like the last.
The face change, the cycle remet.
But cycles are not eternal. They can be broken. The question is, by who? By a leader bold enough to surrender power to the people? By citizens determined to demand accountability beyond elections? Or by a generation that refuses to inherit the failures of the past? Because if history has trapped Zambia in this cycle of power, then the future depends on whether someone is brave enough to break it. And so we arrive at the final chapter, Lumumba's warning. A call not just to Zambia, but to all of Africa, that democracy will not survive unless its people are willing to fight for it.